The morning sun rose over the testing ground like a red-eye opening in the dark sky. The alien champions gathered around the first challenge area, where robotic targets stood in neat rows. The targets were made of advanced materials that could survive most weapon impacts. Each one contained sensors to measure damage and accuracy. The test supervisors announced the rules through floating speaker devices. Each champion would demonstrate their accuracy at increasing distances starting from 500 meters. The aliens considered this distance to be almost insulting. Their weapons could destroy targets from the other side of a solar system. The Vorthon champion stepped forward first. His name was unpronounceable to human ears but meant something like Deathbringer in his language. He stood 3 meters tall and his particle beam cannon was longer than a human body. The weapon hummed with power that made the air shimmer around its barrel. When Deathbringer fired his weapon, the sound was like a mountain exploding. A beam of pure energy lanced across the testing ground faster than the eye could follow. Where it touched the robotic targets, nothing remained but empty space. The metal and circuits simply ceased to exist as if they had never been made. The alien spectators cheered with sounds that hurt human ears. Clicks and roars and mechanical grinding filled the air. The Vorthon had not just hit his targets. He had removed them from reality itself. No human weapon could match such complete destruction. Next came the Zentari Crystal Warrior, whose body reflected sunlight like a living prism. Her weapon looked like a piece of frozen starlight shaped into the form of a rifle. When she aimed it at the targets, the air around them began to bend and twist. The crystal shots passed through solid obstacles as if they were not there. They struck the targets from impossible angles, ignoring the laws of physics that governed normal matter. Each target fell apart in perfect geometric patterns as its atomic structure was rearranged at the molecular level. More alien champions took their turns demonstrating weapons that defied human understanding. The Draxan warchief used a gravity gun that crushed targets into balls of compressed metal. The Shadow Prince fired bullets made of dark matter that absorbed light itself. Each demonstration was more impressive than the last. Weapons that could manipulate time made targets age into dust in seconds. Others created tiny black holes that swallowed everything within a 100-meter radius. Some fired streams of antimatter that released explosions visible from orbit. The test supervisors had to keep moving the observation areas further back, as the alien weapons proved more destructive than expected. Energy shields protected the spectators, but some weapons released radiation that damaged electronic equipment from kilometers away. Finally, it was Min-Ho Lee's turn. The human captain walked calmly to the firing position carrying his rifle case. Compared to the alien weapons, his equipment looked like museum pieces. The rifle was made of ordinary steel and plastic. The bullets were simple pieces of lead wrapped in copper jackets. The alien spectators fell silent as Min-Ho assembled his weapon. They had seen guns like this in historical museums on conquered worlds. Such primitive weapons had been abandoned by most species millions of years ago. Why would humans still use technology that was older than some civilizations? Min-Ho lay down in a shooting position that looked uncomfortable compared to the standing poses used by alien champions. He pressed his eye to the scope and made tiny adjustments to his aim. His breathing became slow and steady like a machine running at perfect rhythm. The first shot rang out across the testing ground with a sharp crack that seemed almost quiet after the thunderous alien weapons. The bullet traveled much slower than energy beams. Its path could actually be tracked by high-speed cameras as it arced through the air. But something unexpected happened when the bullet reached its target. Instead of bouncing off or making a small hole, the metal projectile struck a specific joint in the robot's construction. The impact caused a chain reaction that shut down the entire system in a cascade of sparks. The target had not been destroyed like the alien demonstrations. Instead, it had been surgically disabled by a bullet that found the one weak point in its design. The robot fell apart into neat components that could be easily repaired and reused. The alien spectators made confused sounds as they tried to understand what they had witnessed. The human weapon had accomplished something their advanced technology could not do. It had neutralized a target without wasting energy or resources. Min-Ho fired 4 more shots at the remaining targets. Each bullet found a different weak point and caused a different type of system failure. One target lost power when its main cable was severed. Another had its computer brain scrambled when the bullet created a specific vibration frequency. Sergeant Taejun Park called out environmental data in a quiet voice that only Min-Ho could hear. Wind speed and direction, temperature variations, even the slight movement of the planet under their feet. All of these factors affected bullet flight but were ignored by energy weapons. The test supervisors examined the disabled robots with growing amazement. The damage was incredibly precise, requiring knowledge of the target's internal structure that should have been impossible to obtain. Yet somehow the human shooter had identified and exploited weaknesses that even the robot's designers had not known existed. Dr. Ji-Hai Choi watched from the human observation area with quiet satisfaction. Her analysis had been correct. Alien weapons were designed for maximum destruction, but humans had learned the value of precise application of force. Sometimes a small push in the right place was worth more than all the power in the universe. The alien champions began to mutter among themselves in their various languages. They had expected human weapons to fail completely or to cause laughably small amounts of damage. What they saw instead was a completely different approach to warfare that challenged their basic assumptions. The Vorthan Deathbringer studied the disabled robots with his massive head tilted in confusion. His particle beam could vaporize entire buildings, but it could not accomplish what the simple human bullet had done. Surgical precision was not something his people had ever valued in their weapons. The Crystal Warrior touched one of the disabled robots with a finger made of living diamond. Her weapons could phase through any material, but they had no way to cause such specific and limited damage. Her people fought by overwhelming their enemies with power, not by finding their weaknesses. As the first phase of testing ended, the alien spectators were no longer laughing. They were still confident that their advanced technology would prove superior in the more difficult challenges ahead. But they had begun to realize that human weapons operated according to principles they did not fully understand. Min-Ho cleaned his rifle with careful movements and returned it to its case. He had fired only 5 shots but had accomplished something that would be discussed in alien military academies for generations to come. He had proven that sometimes the most advanced weapon is the one that does exactly what is needed and nothing more. The next phase of testing would take place at much greater distances where surely the primitive human weapons would fail against the unlimited range of alien energy technology, or so the aliens believed. The second day of testing began with targets placed 50 kilometers away across a range of difficult terrain. Mountains, valleys, and rocky plains stretched between the firing position and the distant targets. The test supervisors announced that this phase would separate true warriors from pretenders. The alien champions looked confident as they prepared their weapons for long-range engagement. Energy beams could theoretically travel infinite distances through space. Plasma bolts moved at nearly light speed. Gravity weapons ignored obstacles completely by bending space around them. The Draxon war chief activated a targeting computer that scanned the distant terrain with sensors more powerful than Earth satellites. His weapon system calculated wind patterns, atmospheric density, and gravitational effects automatically. All he had to do was point and shoot. The gravity cannon fired with a sound like reality tearing apart. The projectile traveled in a straight line through solid rock as if the mountains were made of air. When it reached the target 50 kilometers away, the explosion could be seen. From the firing line, like a tiny new sun being born, cheers erupted from the alien spectators as the war chief raised all 6 arms in victory. His people had mastered the art of war when humans were still learning to make fire. No primitive projectile weapon could match technology that manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe. The Shadow Prince fired next, using bullets made of compressed darkness. They moved through normal space like ghosts passing through walls. Distance meant nothing to weapons that existed partially outside reality. The targets vanished into black holes that consumed light itself. Other alien champions demonstrated increasingly impressive long-range capabilities. The energy shepherds used focused starlight to burn targets from orbit. The void swimmers fired torpedoes that traveled through hyperspace to emerge directly inside enemy positions. Each success brought more cheers from the alien crowds. Surely this phase would end the foolish human challenge. No species in galactic history had ever matched alien long-range firepower with primitive kinetic weapons. Min-Ho, Lee studied the distant targets through his rifle scope, while Sergeant Taejun Park climbed to higher ground for a better view of the terrain. The 2 humans worked without electronic equipment or computer assistance. They relied on their own eyes and experience to judge conditions. The aliens watched with amusement as the humans performed what looked like ancient rituals. Taejun released small pieces of cloth into the wind and timed their drift with a simple stopwatch. Minho used a handheld compass and made notes on paper with a pencil. These primitive methods seemed almost magical to beings who had computers that could calculate orbital mechanics in nanoseconds. Why would anyone try to measure wind speed with floating cloth when satellites could provide precise atmospheric data for entire continents? What the aliens did not understand was that their computers could only measure current conditions. Human spotters learned to predict how those conditions would change over time. A bullet would spend nearly 30 seconds traveling to the distant target. Wind patterns could shift multiple times during that flight. Tejan called out observations in a voice too quiet for alien ears to hear. He reported seeing birds circling near the target area, which meant updrafts from heated ground. Dust devils in the valley indicated swirling air currents. Even the way sunlight bent through the atmosphere provided clues about temperature layers. Minho made calculations that seemed impossible without computer assistance. He was accounting for the planet's rotation, which would move the target slightly during bullet flight. He considered the gravitational pull of the world's 3 small moons. He even factored in the magnetic field that could affect the bullet's metal core. The alien spectators began to grow impatient, as the humans took much longer to prepare than anyone else had. Energy weapons could be fired immediately after target acquisition. Why did primitive projectiles require so much complicated preparation? When Minho finally fired his rifle, the aliens tracked the bullet with their sensor equipment. The projectile followed a high arcing path that took it far above the ground-level obstacles. Its speed decreased steadily due to air resistance and gravitational pull. For 28 seconds, the bullet flew through changing atmospheric conditions while the aliens watched its progress on their displays. Many expected it to fall short of the target or drift off course due to wind effects. Surely no organic mind could calculate such a complex trajectory. The bullet struck home with devastating precision, hitting the center of the target. Despite having traveled through dozens of different wind zones and temperature layers, but more impressive was what happened next. The target began transmitting detailed technical data about its own construction. The human bullet had not just hit the target. It had struck a diagnostic port so precisely that it activated the robot's self-analysis programs. The machine began broadcasting information about its armor thickness, sensor locations, and power source configurations. Dr. Ji-hai Choi smiled as she monitored the technical data streaming from the damaged target. Minho had not only proven human accuracy at extreme range, but had also demonstrated intelligence gathering, capabilities that no alien weapon could match. The alien champions stood in stunned silence as they realized what had happened. The primitive human weapon had accomplished something their advanced technology could not do. It had extracted information from the target while neutralizing it. The Zentari Crystal Warrior studied the data transmission with confusion. Her phase weapons could destroy targets by rearranging their atomic structure, but they could not make those targets reveal their secrets. She began to understand that destruction and information gathering required different approaches. The Vorthan Deathbringer compared his own results to the human achievement. His particle beam had completely vaporized his target, leaving nothing behind to study. The human approach preserved valuable intelligence while still eliminating the threat. Test supervisors from multiple alien species gathered to examine the human bullet impact. They found that the projectile had penetrated exactly 7.3 millimeters into the target. Any deeper would have destroyed the diagnostic systems. Any less would not have activated them. This level of precision seemed impossible even with computer assistance. Yet the human shooter had achieved it using only organic senses and mental calculations. The implications were staggering for species that had grown dependent on automated systems. Sergeant Tae-jun Park pointed out additional details that the aliens had missed. The bullet trajectory had been calculated to avoid several flying creatures in the area. It had passed through the cleanest air layers to minimize deflection. The impact angle was chosen to maximize information extraction. The alien spectators began to whisper among themselves in their various languages. Terms like impossible and unprecedented were translated into dozens of different alien tongues. Some species that had remained confident now looked worried about what other surprises humans might have. Admiral Kyung-soo Shin observed the alien reactions from the human command area. He had expected this response when Earth military planners designed the demonstration. Aliens measured success by destruction, but humans had learned to value precision and intelligence. As the long-range phase concluded, The test supervisors announced that one final challenge remained. This would test capabilities that had never been attempted in galactic military history. Surely this ultimate test would restore alien confidence and prove their technological superiority. Min-Ho cleaned his rifle and prepared for whatever came next. He had now proven human capabilities at short and medium ranges. But he knew that the hardest test was still ahead. The aliens would not be satisfied until they found something that human weapons could not accomplish. The stage was set for a confrontation between the most advanced alien technology and the most refined human skills. Only one approach would prove superior when the ultimate challenge was revealed. The final challenge was announced as the sun reached its highest point in the alien sky. The target would be placed 100 kilometers away beyond multiple mountain ranges, in an area where direct sight was completely blocked. Weather conditions included high winds, electromagnetic storms, and temperature variations that changed by the minute. The test supervisors explained that this challenge had been designed to prove that certain shots simply could not be made with existing technology. Even the most advanced alien weapons would struggle with such extreme conditions. It was meant to be the ultimate test of military capability. The alien champions studied the problem using every sensor and computer at their disposal. Their orbital satellites mapped the terrain in perfect detail. Weather monitoring systems tracked wind patterns, temperature layers, and electromagnetic disturbances in real time. The Draxan war chief spent 2 hours running calculations through his weapons targeting computer. The machine processed millions of variables, but could not find a solution that guaranteed target impact. Too many factors changed too quickly for even advanced computers to predict. The Crystal Warrior tried using her phase weapons to scout the target area. Her energy bolts could pass through solid matter. But the electromagnetic storms scrambled their guidance systems. They emerged from hyperspace in random locations nowhere near the intended target. Other alien champions attempted different approaches, but found similar problems. Energy beams lost coherence over such distances through atmospheric interference. Gravity weapons were deflected by magnetic anomalies. Even weapons that manipulated time could not overcome the constantly changing conditions. After 6 hours of analysis, the alien champions began to admit defeat. The challenge seemed impossible by design. Several species suggested that the test parameters be changed to something more reasonable. No military situation would ever require such an extreme shot. The Vorthan Deathbringer declared that the test was unfair to all participants. His particle beam cannon could vaporize entire cities, but it could not maintain focus through 100 kilometers of chaotic atmosphere. Why should any warrior be expected to overcome such obstacles? Min-Ho Lee and Sergeant Taejon Park had been studying the challenge using methods that looked primitive compared to alien technology. They had no satellites or sensors. No computers calculated atmospheric conditions. They relied entirely on direct observation and human intuition. Taejun climbed the highest nearby mountain to observe wind patterns with his own eyes. He watched how clouds moved across distant peaks. He noted how dust and debris were carried by air currents. He timed the movement of everything he could see. From his elevated position, Taejun could see things that no computer could measure. The way sunlight reflected off rock faces revealed temperature differences. The behavior of flying creatures showed where air currents were stable or turbulent. Even the sound of wind through valleys provided clues about atmospheric conditions. Min-Ho studied the electromagnetic storms through his rifle scope. The visual distortions followed patterns that his trained eye could recognize. He had spent years learning to read atmospheric conditions by observing how they affected light and visibility. The two humans worked together with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic to alien observers. They communicated with hand signals and whispered words. No radio transmissions or computer data links connected them. They operated as a perfect team through training and experience alone. While aliens debated whether the challenge was even possible, Min-Ho began making final preparations for his shot. He adjusted his rifle scope to compensate for the extreme range. He calculated ammunition load based on expected atmospheric conditions. He chose his firing position based on factors only he understood. The alien spectators gathered to watch what they assumed would be an inevitable failure. Many felt sorry for the human who was attempting something that superior alien technology could not accomplish. Others were curious to see how far the primitive bullet would travel before falling short. Dr. Ji-Hai Choi monitored the situation from the human command post. She knew that this shot would require everything Minho had learned in 20 years of military service. It would push human capabilities to their absolute limits and possibly beyond. The bullet would have to travel a complex path through multiple climate zones. It would experience different wind speeds and directions at various altitudes. Temperature changes would affect air density and bullet stability. Electromagnetic interference could deflect the metal projectile unpredictably. Most challenging of all, Minho would have to predict how all these conditions would change during the bullet's flight time. The projectile would spend nearly 2 minutes traveling to the target. Weather patterns could shift completely in that time, making any initial calculations useless. As Minho took his firing position, the alien crowds fell silent. Energy weapons could be fired instantly when computers found targeting solutions. This human shot would require patience, timing, and perfect coordination between shooter and spotter. Tae-jun whispered final updates about environmental conditions. Wind patterns had stabilized in the past few minutes. The electromagnetic storm was entering a brief calm phase. Cloud formations indicated that current conditions might hold steady for another few minutes. Minho controlled his breathing to match the rhythm of his heartbeat. Each shot had to be fired between heartbeats when his body was most stable. The timing had to be perfect, because there would be no second chance at these extreme conditions. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed off the mountain walls. The bullet disappeared immediately into the atmospheric chaos beyond visual range. Electronic tracking systems lost contact with the projectile as it entered zones of electromagnetic interference. For nearly 2 minutes, no one knew if the shot had any chance of success. The bullet was traveling through conditions that changed faster than any computer could calculate. Only human intuition and years of experience guided its path toward the invisible target. The alien spectators watched their displays showing nothing but static interference. Their most advanced sensors could not track a simple metal bullet through the electromagnetic storm. They had to wait like everyone else to learn if the impossible shot had found its mark. Finally, a simple electronic tone sounded across the testing ground. The distant target had been struck and disabled. Not only had Minho made an impossible shot, but he had done so with the same surgical precision that characterized all his previous demonstrations. The alien crowd stood in absolute silence as the implications began to sink in. They had witnessed something that challenged every assumption they had made about the limits of military capability. A human with primitive equipment had accomplished what their most advanced technology could not achieve. The impossible had become possible through human skill, determination, and the approach to warfare that no alien species had ever developed. The laughter in the great hall slowly died down as the Draxan war chief rose from his seat. His 6 arms moved like deadly snakes as he stepped forward. Each step made the metal floor ring like a giant bell. Scars covered his thick hide from battles that had lasted for decades. His eyes glowed red like burning coals. The war chief had fought on 1,000 worlds. His people had never lost a single battle in 3,000 years. They were born warriors who lived only to fight and conquer. The idea that soft humans could stand against them was beyond ridiculous. He spoke in a voice like thunder rolling across mountains. The translator machines turned his words into human language, but could not capture the power behind them. He said that words were meaningless. Only battle could prove who was strong and who was weak. The Zentari Crystal Queen agreed with musical tones that rang through the hall. Her body was made of living diamond that reflected light in rainbow patterns. She said her people had destroyed entire star systems that opposed them. Human weapons would shatter against their crystal armor like glass against stone. Other alien leaders nodded their massive heads or clicked their approval. The void swimmers who lived in empty space between stars made sounds like screaming wind. The machine lords spoke in perfect mathematical equations. Even the peaceful energy shepherds agreed that a test was needed. Commander Hyun-woo Kim looked around the hall at all the alien faces staring down at him. Some looked hungry, like predators watching prey. Others seemed bored, as if the outcome was already decided. A few appeared almost sad, as if they felt sorry for the weak humans. The station commander was a being made of flowing liquid metal. His voice sounded like water running over stones. He explained the rules for the combat demonstration. Each species would send their finest warrior to a neutral world. There they would prove their military skills against targets and obstacles. Lieutenant So Young Park stepped closer to her commander. She whispered that they should ask for time to prepare. The alien champions looked incredibly dangerous. Their weapons could probably destroy small moons. How could any human compete against such power? But Hyunwoo had already made his choice. He accepted the challenge immediately without asking for delays or special conditions. His calm voice carried clearly through the huge hall. He said Earth would send a representative who would demonstrate human military capabilities. The aliens began laughing again, but this time the sound was different. Before they had laughed because humans seemed weak and funny. Now they laughed because humans seemed foolish and doomed. The difference made the laughter darker and more cruel. The Vorthon delegate slammed his massive fist on his platform. The sound was like a building falling down. He said humans were either very brave or very stupid. Either way, they would learn why the Vorthon Empire ruled over 50 star systems. Captain Min-ho Lee had been waiting in a small room near the main hall. When the call came, he walked out to meet the alien stairs. He wore simple military clothing with no decorations or fancy equipment. Compared to the alien champions, he looked like a child playing dress-up in his father's uniform. The aliens studied this new human with interest and amusement. Min-ho was not very tall or heavily built. His hands looked soft compared to alien claws and metal fingers. His eyes were just normal human eyes, not glowing orbs of power or mechanical sensors. What the aliens could not see was the training that had shaped every muscle in Min-ho's body. They could not detect the reflexes that had been honed through years of practice. Most importantly, they could not measure the calm focus that allowed him to function perfectly under extreme pressure. Dr. Ji-hai Choi watched from the human observation area. She was Earth's chief military strategist and had studied every alien species for months. Her computer files contained detailed analysis of their strengths, weaknesses, and fighting styles. She knew that alien warriors depended heavily on their advanced technology. Their weapons did most of the work while the warrior simply pointed and fired. They had computer targeting systems that automatically found and tracked enemies. They had shields that activated by themselves when danger was detected. This dependence on technology was their greatest weakness. If their computers failed or their power sources were damaged, the mighty alien warriors became much less dangerous. They had forgotten how to fight with just their natural abilities and simple tools. The test location was announced as Kepler 442c, a dead world with varied terrain. There were mountains, valleys, deserts, and frozen plains. The world had no atmosphere that could interfere with energy weapons, but plenty of obstacles that would challenge different fighting styles. Transport ships began arriving to carry the champions to the test world. The alien ships were massive vessels that bristled with weapons and armor. They looked like flying fortresses designed to wage war across entire galaxies. The human transport ship was much smaller and simpler. It looked more like a cargo hauler than a military vessel. The aliens pointed and made jokes about humans being too poor to afford proper warships. As the ships prepared to depart, the alien champions displayed their weapons one more time. The Draxon brought a gravity hammer that could flatten mountains. The Zentari carried crystal blades that could cut through any known material. The Vorthon had plasma cannons that burned hotter than stellar cores. Min-ho boarded his transport ship carrying only a long metal case. Inside was his rifle and basic equipment. The weapon looked ancient compared to alien technology. The metal was dark and worn from years of use. The scope was larger than normal, but still looked primitive next to alien targeting systems. Sergeant Taejun Park joined Min-ho on the transport ship. He would serve as spotter and support during the trials. Like Min-ho, he carried simple equipment that looked worthless compared to alien gear. The two humans sat quietly as their ship traveled toward the test world. They did not boast about their weapons or make threats against their opponents. Instead, they reviewed data about the test terrain and discussed tactics in low voices. Other ships in the convoy were filled with alien warriors practicing with their weapons and roaring battle songs. The sounds carried through space communications, channels like the voices of monsters preparing for war. When the convoy reached Kepler 442c, the alien champions immediately began setting up elaborate camps with force fields and automated defenses. Their equipment required massive power sources and technical support teams. Min-ho and Taejun simply found a flat piece of ground and rolled out sleeping bags. Their entire camp could fit in a small circle while alien camps spread across several square kilometers. The test supervisors were impressed by the alien displays, but puzzled by the human simplicity. They began to wonder if the humans understood what they had gotten themselves into. The huge space station looked like a metal city floating among the stars. Inside the main hall, thousands of alien beings sat in rows that went up to the ceiling. Their strange voices filled the air with sounds that no human had ever heard before. Some made clicking noises like giant insects. Others roared like wild animals. A few sounded like machines breaking down. Commander Hyunwoo Kim walked slowly toward the center of the hall. His black military uniform was perfect. Every button shined. Every metal was in the right place. His boots made small sounds on the metal floor. Behind him, Lieutenant So Young Park carried a metal case. Inside were pictures and videos of Earth weapons. The alien creatures stared at the two humans. Some had eyes like red fire. Others had no eyes at all but seemed to see everything. A few had so many arms that Hyunwoo stopped counting after 6. Their skin was every color he could imagine. Green like leaves, blue like deep water, silver like mirrors. Some had no skin but were made of what looked like living rock. The Vorthon delegate stood up first. He was twice as tall as any human and covered in thick scales. Each scale was the size of a dinner plate. His teeth were long and sharp like sword blades. When he moved his massive arms, the whole platform shook under his weight. The human delegate area was small and plain compared to the alien sections. Other species had brought huge displays of their weapons. The Zentari had brought a crystal cannon that floated in the air by itself. It glowed with inner light that hurt to look at directly. The weapon was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The Draxan war chief had 6 different weapons attached to his 6 arms. Each weapon hummed with power that made the air around him shimmer like heat waves. His natural armor was thicker than tank plating. Battle scars covered every inch of his body, telling stories of 1,000 victories. Hyunwoo opened the metal case and took out a simple tablet computer. The screen showed pictures of human soldiers holding rifles. The weapons looked small and basic compared to what the aliens had brought. Some humans carried pistols that could fit in their hands. Others had rifles that were only as long as a human arm. The Vorthon delegate made a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. This was Vorthon laughter. Soon other aliens joined in. The Zentari made sounds like breaking glass. The Draxan roared with voices that shook the walls. Even the smaller alien species made their own versions of laughter. A floating jellyfish creature spoke in a voice like singing wind. It said human weapons were toys for children. Its own people could destroy entire planets with weapons that bent space and time. Why would anyone use simple bullets when they could unmake matter itself? The Beetle Queen clicked her mandibles together in rhythm. She explained that her species had weapons that could eat through any armor ever made. The weapons were alive and grew stronger by consuming their targets. Human bullets would just bounce off like raindrops. So Young showed videos of human soldiers in training. The aliens watched humans shooting at paper targets from short distances. They saw humans practicing with knives and learning hand-to-hand combat. The sight made them laugh even harder. An energy being made of pure light pulsed brighter as it spoke. It said its people had moved beyond physical weapons entirely. They could attack the minds of their enemies directly. They could make entire armies forget how to fight. What good were bullets against beings made of thought itself? The Crystal Empress held up one finger and made a small mountain of metal appear in the air above them. Then she pointed at it and the mountain turned into dust that blew away. She said this was her people's weakest weapon. Their strong weapons could destroy solar systems. Hyunwoo listened to all of this without changing his expression. His training had prepared him for this reaction. Earth generals knew that aliens would laugh at human weapons. They knew that other species measured strength only by how much they could destroy. What the aliens did not know was that destruction was not the only measure of power. They had never learned that sometimes the smallest force applied in exactly the right place could achieve what no amount of raw power could accomplish. The Shark Prince showed teeth like metal spears as he smiled. He said his people respected courage, but humans were bringing sticks to fight against gods. It would be entertaining to watch, but it would not last long. More aliens spoke up to add their own comments. Each one described weapons more powerful than the last. Some could make black holes. Others could stop time itself. A few claimed they could destroy the past so their enemies never existed at all. Through all of this, Hyunwoo remained calm and quiet. He had been chosen for this mission, Because he could stay cool under pressure. Earth needed someone who would not be impressed by alien boasting or frightened by their threats. So Young closed the tablet and put it back in the case. The presentation was over. The aliens had seen what they wanted to see. Simple human weapons that looked weak and primitive compared to their advanced technology. What none of them noticed was that Hyunwoo had been watching them very carefully during their demonstrations. He was memorizing how their weapons worked. He was noting which aliens seemed most confident, and which ones were only pretending to be strong. Most importantly, he was looking for weaknesses. Every weapon system had them. Every warrior had blind spots. Every technology had limits. The aliens were so busy showing off their power that they were revealing exactly how to defeat them. The station commander called for order. The demonstrations were finished. Now it was time to decide if humans deserved to join the Galactic Defense Alliance. Most aliens seemed to think it would be cruel to let such weak beings try to fight alongside real warriors. Hyunwoo smiled for the first time since entering the hall. The aliens mistook this for nervousness or shame. They had no idea that human warriors smiled when they discovered their opponents had underestimated them completely. 3 kilometers away from the space station, a human sniper named Minho Lee lay, perfectly still on a piece of floating debris. His rifle was aimed at the station through a scope that could count individual scales on a Vorthon hide. He was waiting for orders that might never come. The first part of Earth's plan was complete. The aliens now believed humans were weak and harmless. Soon they would learn how wrong they were. The alien spectators remained frozen in complete silence as the reality of what they had witnessed slowly penetrated their minds. The impossible shot had not been luck or accident. It represented a completely different understanding of warfare that challenged everything they believed about military power. The Draxan war chief was the first to move. His 6 massive arms hung at his sides like broken weapons. For 3,000 years, his people had never lost a battle. They had conquered worlds with technology that could reshape matter itself. Yet a simple human with an ancient rifle had accomplished something their greatest weapons could not achieve. The crystal warrior touched her diamond weapons with fingers that trembled like breaking glass. Her phase technology could ignore the laws of physics by existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, but all that advanced science had been defeated by human intuition and organic precision. Admiral Kyung-Soo Shin stepped forward to address the assembled alien dignitaries. His voice carried clearly across the silent testing ground. He did not boast about human superiority or demand recognition for Earth military might. Instead, he simply explained the philosophy behind everything they had witnessed. Human weapons had not been designed to replace the warrior, but to enhance human capabilities. While alien species had pursued increasingly automated systems, humans had developed increasingly sophisticated operators. Technology served the human rather than controlling the battle. The aliens began to understand that their pursuit of raw power had led them down a different evolutionary path. They had created weapons so advanced that the warriors who used them had become unnecessary. Computers aimed, fired, and evaluated results while alien soldiers simply observed. This dependency had made them incredibly powerful, but also predictable. Their weapons followed programmed responses to tactical situations. Human warriors adapted and improvised in ways that no computer could match. They found solutions that did not exist in any database. Captain Do-hyun Kim, the human military attaché, provided tactical analysis that revealed the deeper implications of the demonstration. Human snipers were not just accurate shooters. They were intelligent specialists who could gather information while eliminating targets. They were psychological warfare experts who could break enemy morale with surgical strikes. Most importantly, they were independent operators who could function without support systems or technological infrastructure. While alien warriors needed massive supply chains and technical support teams, a human sniper could operate alone for months using only basic equipment. The Vorthon Death Bringer approached Minho with slow, heavy steps. His massive form cast a shadow that covered the human completely. When he spoke, his voice was different from before. The arrogance and contempt were gone, replaced by something the aliens had rarely felt toward other species. Respect. He asked Minho to explain how the impossible shot had been accomplished. Not the technical details, but the mental process that allowed a human to succeed where alien computers had failed. What kind of training created warriors who could perform such feats? Minho answered in simple words that the translator systems turned into alien languages. He explained that human warriors learned to work with their weapons rather than depending on them. They studied their targets as individuals rather than treating them as generic obstacles. They adapted to conditions rather than trying to overcome them with brute force. The aliens listened with growing fascination as Minho described human military training. Soldiers learned to function in all environments without electronic support. They practiced making life and death decisions in seconds without computer assistance. They studied the psychology of combat as much as the mechanics of weapons. Sergeant Tae-jun Park added details about the spotter system that had made the long-range shots possible. Two humans working as a perfect team could accomplish things that no individual could achieve alone. They shared observations, combined knowledge, and supported each other through the stress of combat. This concept of partnership between equals was foreign to most alien species. Their military hierarchies were based on dominance and submission. Orders flowed down from superior to inferior without question or discussion. The idea that two soldiers could function as cooperative partners rather than commander and subordinate was revolutionary. Dr. Ji Hai Choi presented her analysis of alien military doctrine to the assembled representatives. She had studied their tactics for months and identified patterns that they themselves had not recognized. Their dependence on technology had created blind spots that human warfare could exploit. Alien weapons were incredibly powerful, but they all functioned according to similar principles. They used energy or exotic physics to achieve maximum destruction in minimum time. This made them predictable to opponents who understood their capabilities. Human weapons were less powerful individually, but infinitely more flexible in application. The same rifle could disable electronics, gather intelligence, eliminate specific targets, or provide psychological pressure. Versatility replaced raw power as the measure of effectiveness. The test supervisors announced the official results, but the numbers seemed meaningless now. Minho had achieved perfect accuracy at all ranges under all conditions. But more important than statistics was what the demonstration revealed about human potential. Commander Hyun-woo Kim presented Earth's formal application for membership in the Galactic Defense Alliance. But the discussion that followed was completely different from what anyone had expected. Instead of debating human qualifications, the alien species began asking what they could learn from human military science. The Crystal Queen requested permission to send observers to Earth military academies. She wanted her people to study human training methods and tactical doctrine. Other species quickly made similar requests, recognizing that they had been missing fundamental aspects of warfare. The Energy Shepherds offered to share their advanced technology in exchange for human instructors who could teach their warriors to function without complete dependence on automated systems. Even the proud Draxon admitted that their military doctrine needed updating. What had begun as a test of human worthiness became a discussion of military exchange programs and cooperative training initiatives. The aliens realized that human membership would benefit the entire alliance by introducing new approaches to warfare that no one had previously considered. The Void Swimmers made an observation that struck at the heart of what had happened. They noted that every alien species had pursued military advancement by replacing biological limitations with technological solutions. Humans had chosen to enhance biological capabilities while maintaining organic flexibility and intuition. This philosophical difference had led to completely different military capabilities. Alien warriors were incredibly powerful, but limited by their programming. Human warriors were less individually powerful, but unlimited in their adaptability and creative problem-solving. As the formal ceremonies concluded and Earth was unanimously accepted into the Galactic Defense Alliance, the alien representatives began making plans for the future. Military treaties were discussed. Training exchange programs were proposed. Some species even requested human military advisors for their own armed forces. Minho quietly disassembled his rifle and packed it away, while alien dignitaries surrounded him with questions and requests. He had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. He had proven that sometimes the most advanced approach is the one that perfectly balances technology with human capability. The laughter that had filled the Great Hall days earlier was now completely silent. It had been replaced by respect, curiosity, and recognition, that humanity brought something unique and valuable to the galactic community. Earth weapons were not primitive. They were evolved beyond current alien understanding. As transport ships prepared to return the participants to their homeworlds, the aliens carried with them new ideas about what warfare could become. They had witnessed the perfect integration of human skill and mechanical precision. They had seen the future of military science. The story that would spread throughout the galaxy would not focus on the impossible shots or the technical demonstrations. Instead, it would tell of the moment when the most powerful military forces in known space realized they had been so focused on building better weapons that they had forgotten to build better warriors. Human membership in the Galactic Defense Alliance opened new possibilities for what military cooperation could achieve when different approaches to warfare were combined, rather than competing against each other.